I'm just gonna wait for you to put the drink away. Is pretty much what I'm waiting for.
I'm pre-gaming. Okay.
There's alcohol in there. Which is look nasty. This episode is sponsored by Dr. Pepper because it's what I'm gonna be drinking. I can't wait for this to be all edited to the shorts that we're gonna have on the unedited podcast.
Mm-hmm.
You can check us out on YouTube at.
You don't know the name of the podcast, dude. Housework. Don't mind that. If you hear this mic's supposed to drown out stuff from the background though, so you might not even hear that. There's a drill.
So the first movie that we ever watched together was Venom 3: The Last Dance.
It's true.
And the reason we watched it is because one, we're very big nerds and we like that kind of stuff, but two, because it was fun to make fun of and have a lot of opinions about.
That was the funniest thing ever to make fun of. Oh my
that movie,
gosh.
If you haven't seen it, you're welcome. Because I saw it for you, and I could tell you it was really bad.
That's for a different episode, though. We could actually do a whole episode on Venom 3.
And if you want us to, like and subscribe. And subscribe to our Patreon.
We don't have a Patreon. But if we did... You'd be in trouble.
But basically, we're big nerds, and we like to talk about a lot of different subjects, different things.
Our wedding was literally Superman themed, so.
Exactly, and so we want to talk about all kinds of stuff on here, and connect with all of you, and just like if you have any feedback, if you have any things you want to say about like, oh, I like this, or can you guys talk about this? We're open to talk about literally anything. Nothing's off the table, as long as it's
I'm not gonna watch that show.
Yeah,
I'm not gonna elaborate in case you like that show.
And if you like that show, we like it too.
Remember what we talked about in therapy. You can't be a people pleaser. Have to be true to yourself. All right. Well, we have an actual topic for today, and that topic is Star Wars Rebels.
We watched Star Wars Rebels, and that was one of the first things.
We watched Star Wars Rebels.
We watched Star Wars Rebels, Princess. We watched Star Wars Rebels. I know you're like, oh, you watched Star Wars Rebels in 2026. You're probably like the 500 millionth person who's ever talked about it. Yeah, you're right.
That doesn't matter though. The thing is, be prepared for us to do whatever we want. We will dig up ancient, prehistoric shows and talk about them whenever we want.
The reason we decided to pick this as the first topic is for two reasons. One, we just watched it, devastated us, loved it, great. Second of all, Mandalorian and Grogu is coming out literally in this Friday, I actually think. So,
oh, shoot.
Yeah.
We need to buy our tickets.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
It's literally coming out this Friday, and it's going to have some heavy Star Wars Rebels ties, and that's probably going to come up later in the episode as I talk about theories and segments about, my summaries and final thoughts about Star Wars Rebels. So I felt like it was a necessary topic to talk about going forward with what you guys probably want to see in the future, talking about, different Star Wars stuff, different shows that are coming out. Ahsoka's coming out next year. It's going to deal heavy with Star Wars Rebels. And so if you don't really know what's going on with Star Wars Rebels, or you just want to hear someone else's opinion, if you want to watch it, or you have watched it and you want to hear someone else's opinion, I think that is basically why we're here. So if you are not in the Star Wars atmosphere, or if you've watched the movies and you haven't really been like watching any of the animated shows, or if you're not catched up with what Star Wars Rebels is, I think I'll just give you a quick breakdown right now. Star Wars Rebels is the second animated show by Dave Filoni, the creator of Avatar: The Last Airbender. I'm actually not sure if he created the show. He's the director. He directed it. And Star Wars: The Clone Wars was his first animated show in the universe, and Star Wars Rebels is the second one. Star Wars Rebels came out to be after the Disney acquisition, after they bought Lucasfilm. Everything that they were working on before, that means the Clone Wars, all the video games and such, if they're in that time, it was around 2012, 2013-ish. I could be getting my years wrong. But they bought Lucasfilm, and they were saying, all right, stop production, all this stuff. We want to do new stuff. We're going to make new movies. Can you make it tied in the movies? And they hired Dave Filoni on there, like, make a new show. We like Clone Wars, but we're ending that, and we want to do something new. So they pretty much were started a whole new show. And so Dave Filoni was like, okay, got this whole new show got to make. And so what he did was he took ideas and concepts he had for what Clone Wars was originally going to be about, because when he was making Clone Wars, it wasn't supposed to be about any of the prequels characters. It was kind of supposed to be its own thing in the universe, and then they would tie into the war and stuff, but that was a rejected pitch. So pretty much during when he was in the process of making Star Wars Rebels, he was like, what if I went back to those old concepts about, a family in space, fighting against, evil tyranny and, Star Wars.
Mm-hmm.
And so pretty much he went back and took those concepts and he decided to make it into the premise of what now became Star Wars Rebels. So Star Wars Rebels is about 6 main characters who are this like found family who came together during the years after the Clone Wars, after Order 66, but before A New Hope. So it's in that little time gap between the originals and the prequels. It's in that little time gap there, and that's a lot of where Dave Filoni's like niche is at the current moment of creating stories in that little pocket of time in the Star Wars universe. So that's where that takes place. So the story follows a young smuggler, Aladdin kind of boy.
That's I didn't even ever make that connection, but he is very
He's pretty
Aladdin-ish.
much Aladdin-ish.
Yeah,
and
he
so,
even kind of looks like him. He's a little bit like, what's that ethnicity?
Arabic?
Like Middle Eastern?
Yeah. Something like that. Of Ezra Bridger. So Ezra Bridger is this orphan boy from a planet called Lothal. He is force sensitive, it turns out, and he meets the gang of the rebels because he tries to steal from them, and he gets to be part of this team. He figures it out because he meets someone named Kanan Jarrus. Now, Kanan Jarrus is a Jedi who was a survivor of Order 66, which is in the Star Wars universe, basically the big event that wiped out all the Jedi. The clone troopers turned against the Jedi, killed them all. It's a whole thing. I can get into a whole side tangent about that, but he's a survivor from that group. Dropped the ways of the Force, just living, with his whole family. Finds Ezra Bridger. He feels called to him to start training him, mentoring him. So that's kind of like a lot of what the main show is about those two. But then you also follow characters such as Hera Syndulla, which I was told that you have to talk about. So
I said that? Oh, okay. Hera's great. She's like this total hot green alien chick, and I love how you're like, here's all these wonderful details about what the show's about, and I'm like, yeah, there's like a green baddie. Yeah. No, but she's a Twi'lek and she's great. She's kind of the leader, honestly. She's like the pilot, and she's the mom character of the show, and the other younger characters are honestly kind of like Kanan and Hera's like kids kind of as the show goes on, and they take care of them, and they're kind of like parental figures, and it's just really great because she's just different than a lot of female characters that I feel like are written, especially in Star Wars shows, and she became my favorite very quickly. But you probably want to finish introducing the rest of the characters before I go on some crazy tangent.
She very much. I showed her we watched Star Wars Rebels together, and like from episode 2, she was like, Hera is not only my favorite Star Wars character, but she's my favorite like thing ever. And she hyper focused on Hera for like 2 months now.
Yeah,
and I've had to live with every 5 seconds she's like, oh my gosh, let me tell you about Hera Syndulla. So she's very important to her, so that's why I was like, I need to give you the floor to introduce that character. But
she's great.
She's kind of like the mom of the group. Kanan's kind of like the dad of the group. Then you have Zeb.
Sabine. Oh,
I was gonna talk about Zeb next.
Okay.
I don't know why.
My other queen.
Then we have Zeb, who's her other favorite character. Zeb is based on an old concept of what Chewbacca was supposed to be in the original trilogy. They actually went back when they were designing the character, found that drawing that Ralph McQuarrie, I believe is his name. If I get that wrong, I'm sorry. You have to deal with that. Ralph McQuarrie drew concept arts for the original Star Wars movie. So Zeb was one of the characters that he drew. It wasn't called Zeb. It was just called like Lasat Warrior or something. I don't even know if it was called Lasat at the time. I think
it actually said Chewbacca on it.
It was called probably just Chewbacca, but Lasat is what the alien species is called. At some point, that became a species that was before they made Star Wars Rebels. So that was...
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
Yeah, so it's like an alien that was introduced that he's one of them. He's the last surviving member of his species, so a lot of good story potential there. He's kind of like the big brute kind of character, but he's the traditional like big brute with the heart of gold kind of guy
Yeah.
in the group, and that's how he completes that group in that way. Then you have Sabine Wren, who is the Mandalorian of the group. She's very important for what they're doing in Star Wars right now. With a whole ties to the Mandalorian and Mandalorian and Grogu. There's a lot of Mandalorians are currently the thing in Star Wars, so she's very important. That they don't really flesh her out in the first season, but you do later find out a lot about her. About she was an Imperial cadet in the Imperial Army, and she was tasked to design a weapon that would kill Mandalorians actually. And I'll probably get more into that when we break down different parts of the show later on. But pretty much she did horrible things to the Empire, broke away from it, was abandoned by her family, found this family, joined them. So there's a lot of story potential with her in it. And the last character, not really like a big story character, but it's Chopper. We love Chopper. Everyone loves Chopper.
Chopper's the droid of the group, and he's great. He's honestly, I grew up loving the droids in Star Wars. I've always loved R2D2, but somehow I love Chopper more than R2D2 because he has so much personality. For a droid, he is like, it's just so great. Like it's almost like he talks, like you can kind of tell what he's saying at times.
Yeah, because he's actually voiced by Dave Filoni, the creator of the show. And I don't know if it was on purpose or like how they decided to do it, but he kind of talks as if like someone's mouth is closed, like kind of talking like that.
Yeah.
And you can almost, as the story goes, kind of understand him. So it's kind of funny.
It's really funny. He's great. I love him so much.
Yeah. So he's the little droid of the show. He's kind of like if R2D2 was a loyal dog, Chopper is a selfish cat. And so that's kind of what the character is. He's kind of a little cat miscreant character in the show. Causes a lot of trouble, but he's kind of endearing and lovable at the same time, especially as the show goes on. He's kind of annoying at first in a ways. To be honest, most of them are kind of annoying at first in a lot of ways. But they all get better as they
They're
progress
honestly
the story.
not that bad. They're not that bad.
No.
Yeah, so a lot of great characters, really dynamic backstories. I really like. They all are like decently mature in the beginning. I feel like currently we're watching Avatar: The Last Airbender. Oh boy, we got to do an episode on that because those kids are insufferably immature in the beginning, and I feel like that's something I like about Rebels is that they start out very much so like they're very locked in. Like they're like the Empire is like we need to take them down, and that's their goal from the get-go.
Yeah. So the first season is kind of about them kind of finding each other, finding their like groove as a family together. I like what you said about them being very like they're very locked in on what their mission is, but their mission at first is kind of admittedly a little silly. Of you have this big bad empire who's been ruling over everything. And so the show starts off of less of let's fight this tyrannical regime and more like let's blow up some like ships and stuff and like steal from them and smuggle things. So it's kind of like it's very kid focused in the beginning of the show, and the characters are kind of like very more childish in ways, I would say, except maybe Kanan. Even like Hera's a little more childish in just her portrayal, I would say, because she's more of like I'm a fun pilot instead of like the leader of the rebellion that she comes.
I guess, yeah, that's kind of true.
I would say in the season 1, it's all the characters like finding their footsteps and how they want to write them as the story goes. So
I would definitely say, it goes from like in the beginning, it feels like a typical kids show, kind of in the same way that Avatar does, but it very quickly gets on course for what the plot is shaping up to be, because it started to feel so much different even halfway through season 1, and then it just kept building upon that, and then by season 2 it was like, okay, this is getting really serious. By season 3 it was like, okay, this isn't just a kid's show anymore. And it's like, I feel like there's a difference between a kid's show that is geared towards adults and a kind of animated show that was made with adults in mind, but kids can also enjoy it. And I feel like Rebels is one of those shows that it starts out as a kid's show that wants to be a kid's show, and then I feel like it really takes form into like, oh wait, this has potential to be something really amazing. And then it kind of keeps going, and it's like, oh, this is more geared towards adults now, but with restraint so that kids can still enjoy it. And I really like when things are written that way.
It starts off very lighthearted and then becomes very mature in its themes of the fact that it's like it's still for kids, but it's not for kids in the way of like we're dumbing this down for you. It's we know kids are more mature than a lot of people give them credit for, and so we're going to portray concepts and ideas that's like kids already understand those concepts.
Yeah.
But we're actually like expounding upon them, and like I feel like the show as it goes on, it gets a little darker in its themes,
Yeah.
but not darker in terms of forgetting its audience.
Yeah.
And so the very first season is very much like lighthearted adventures, and it slowly turns into like a very powerful message of what like what love is, what is like justice, what is like fighting against this like evil, what is standing
Sacrifice.
up, self-sacrifice,
Yeah.
what it takes to be for the greater good, all concepts such as that like you think fly over the kids' head, but I know kids understand. So if you have kids and you haven't shown them Star Wars Rebels, I would highly recommend it for them. I obviously watch it first and be your own judge. I feel like you think maybe it might be too mature as it goes on for them, but I think you would be very surprised of how it tackles its themes and such to a way that kids are still able to keep up and watch it, and I feel like teach them a lesson throughout that, and that's very important.
Yeah, like when we were watching Avatar earlier today, we were
Oh my
like, some of
goodness.
these lessons in here are like, I feel like they're not great for the kids. Like, there was one point when Katara was like being peer pressured into something, and she was like, well, if everyone else is doing it, I guess it's okay. And they just never addressed that. They were never like,
Yeah, there were some
oh,
things I was
you
like,
know, it's not okay to do things just because everyone else is doing them. I'm sorry, guys. They just blew over that, and I was like,
for context, we love Avatar,
we do.
but we're coming from a place of like we noticed some critiques after like watching Rebels and showing like, okay, this is what a kids show can do. And if you like Avatar so much and that's your diehard show and you like it more than Rebels, that's fine. I'm not saying
Yeah.
that's bad. I'm just saying when I watched Rebels, I felt like it was a very mature take on a kids show, and when then watching Avatar in like juxtaposition to that,
It
you're
is
like,
a lot more
whoa,
goofy.
It's like very goofy. Not
It's
saying
so
it's bad,
yeah,
but
it's goofy. I mean, in the best way.
oh, for
It's
sure.
so much more goofy, and I think that's something I noticed instantly, like about Rebels since I've been watching Avatar, because I feel like there's a lot of like silly humor in Avatar, and there's a lot of like, oh, haha, silly, you know, you want to make the kids laugh or whatever, and it's like, I don't know, Rebels is so far from that, and it's like
yeah.
it would never do that, and so that's a very big difference between the two. Is I feel like even the music and like the humor style and stuff like that is it's like so different to me.
Yeah.
The two are great on their own. Just it's like when you watch a piece of media that's different, it sometimes makes the differences of the other piece of media stand out, and so I think that's just some things I've been noticing since I've been watching that about Rebels.
Yeah. I'm going to talk about a little bit of the storyline behind Rebels and a little bit of like throughout, because it's going to come into a final analysis of my views on the Star Wars universe and what everything kind of ties together. So I'm just saying that I'm getting into this part of the video. If you haven't seen Star Wars Rebels, I would say just watch it first, because I'm going to drop a lot of spoilers and stuff and talk about it. So if you haven't seen it, I would recommend just going and watching it for yourself. If you don't care, I mean, it is a 10-year-old show, so at some point you got to go just, you know, if you hear this is the first time you're hearing it, I hope I do a good job, but very much watch the show. It's very much worth your time. Very good, and it ties in a lot of what Star Wars is doing right now. So if you're watching like the new shows, the Disney Plus ones,
Yeah,
or the
if
Mandalorian
you're about to watch
Grogu,
The Mandalorian and Grogu, watch Rebels first.
yeah, and like
Especially before you watch
Yeah.
the Ahsoka show.
because a lot of those shows are very like has their founding in Rebels. So if you're not caught up, you might be confused. So if you're confused watching it, it's because I feel like they might not have explained everything better in the context of the show. But if you want to know more, watch Rebels, because it explains a lot
Yeah.
of what's currently happening there. So without that all being said, season 1 pretty much is obviously the more lighthearted and more campy season out of all of them. It still has mature themes, but it's very
Yeah.
much like a little bit of a more lighthearted ride. It's really just about you have the Grand Inquisitor. He's the main villain of the show, played by Jason Isaacs, I believe. Again,
I did not know that.
Bad at names. He's the guy who played Lucius Malfoy in Harry Potter. That's what I know him best for. He also played what's that movie my dad just watched with us?
Patriot?
The Patriot.
Yeah.
He's also in The Patriots and was very good in that. He's the villain in that. He plays a lot of villain roles well. So he was the voice of the Grand Inquisitor. Very cool character. He's pretty much the main antagonist trying to hunt them down. So it's mostly, that season's mostly about Kanan and Ezra trying to learn the ways of the Jedi, learn off each other. They're very different than most Jedi, and that's something I really appreciate of the show. Is a lot of Jedi masters are more cold and distant, and the Padawans are very much very young and naive and eager to learn. And these two are very it's addressed in the show that they're a very different set of Jedi, where Kanan's struggling with self-doubt. He doesn't know if he's a good teacher. He barely got any training himself, but now he has this kid he's trying to teach. He's trying to do the best he can, but he's very much struggling. And Ezra's more of a, I grew up on the streets kind of kid, not really like...
I never thought about him that way.
Yeah, he's not very like
he's
your typical... He's not your typical like, oh my gosh, I want to learn. It's more like, I guess I will, but I kind of have my own way of life. And so they kind of like have a little trouble meshing at first and trying to learn off each other and stuff. And this first season is just about them overcoming their fears, overcoming their differences, and trying to figure out ways that they could be really good together. And by the end of it, they're like very tight knit and like figure it out, while they're also just being hunted by the Grand Inquisitor. The other characters in the show get a little bit fleshed out. You find out a little bit about Zeb, because the secondary villain, I would say, is a character called Agent Callus. Agent Callus is an ISB agent for the Empire, and he's trying to just do his job and take out any rebel insurgencies. And so he's fighting against the rebels. His character wiped out the rest of Zeb's people and killed all those guys. And so Zeb hates that guy. That guy hates Zeb because, from his point of view, Zeb and the crew are evil. So you got those guys fighting. That's kind of what the season is about. A lot more lighthearted stuff. Then you get into season 2. Season 2 is where I think it switches up. Your main villains in season 3 is surprisingly, I would say, Darth Vader, for one, which is kind of cool for a show like this. It's like, oh, it's an animated kids show, and Darth Vader is a big Star Wars character, but you don't expect them to bring in the big guns. They got Darth Vader in it. You got 2 Inquisitors following them. In that season, it's mostly about expounding on each of the characters, their arcs, and figuring out who they are. Very much focused more on Kanan and Ezra and their relationship and stuff. Ezra being more like questioning the galaxy, and like he goes, okay, I understand the Jedi training, but I'm like, what's the dark side? What's like, he meets characters like Hondo in that season, Hondo and Maul. He has a very like, oh, I trust my instincts and trust my gut kind of attitude about him. So he's like, he gets confused when untrustworthy characters come up, because he's like, why shouldn't I trust them? The Force is connected to every living being, stuff like that. So during that season, it's mostly just about him figuring out everything in his place in the universe.
It was so interesting watching it, because I feel like season 1, I was like, oh, this show's so cute, like little smuggler kid, and like their problems were like, oh no, we did too many missions and we ran out of fuel, and now we have to go find fuel, and here, oh no, something went wrong while we were finding fuel. And then season 2 was like, oh my gosh, they're in the Sith temple, and the Sith holocron is like trying to activate or whatever, and like Maul shows up out of nowhere in this cave, and he's trying to get Ezra to activate the Sith holocron, and then he's like planning to do evil things with it, and then Darth Vader shows up levitating on a TIE fighter for aura purposes. Like, he didn't have to do that. There's no one flying the TIE fighter. He's just like,
it's very important that no one was flying it
up while he's standing on it. There's nobody in there, and he's like just aura farming, and then fights Ahsoka, and then Ahsoka dies, and it's like, where's the fuel? Like,
I know.
What's the problem?
I know. It got dark when it was like the first season was like, wow, we really gotta find those Malurons. And then you get to that, and they're like, oh, the Inquisitors are running a human trafficking ring, and you're just like, oh, nice, love it.
Yeah. So I was honestly blown away when I got to the end of season 2, because I was like, okay, this is like a completely different show. And then when Thrawn gets introduced later, once again, is a completely different show.
Yeah, each season expounds on, like, each villain gets more deeper and seriouser as this art goes. So you have the Grand Inquisitor. He's very cool, very serious, but he's nothing compared to Vader.
Yeah.
And somehow this show does a cool thing where you get Vader and he's cool and all, and he's like the main villain, but he's not. He's more focused on other things, so he's not really focused on these guys. So the next season after that is you have Thrawn, and he's way more intense than Vader in the context of the show. I think overall in Star Wars, Vader is just more of an intense character, but Thrawn played a completely different way of being a villain. But yeah, season 2 ended with a complete loss.
Yeah. There was literally no bright side.
Pretty much,
to it
Maul killed all the
time.
Inquisitors, so they're gone. You don't have to worry about them. He stole the Sith holocron, corrupted Ezra. Ezra kind of falls to the dark side.
Blinded
a bit there.
Kanan.
Kanan gets blinded, which is a big deal, and a lot of the characters get kind of like muddy, lost. They have to figure out what they do. Season 3 opens up after the aftermath of all that. Kanan pretty much just retreated back into hiding. He became a shell of his former self because he was very depressed about being blinded, felt like he couldn't offer anything in the universe anymore. So he kind of does take a bit of a backseat in season 3, but it does explore his character arc of learning what to do now that he's very much been changed by physically changed by being blinded. So his character is very different. Ezra is very much of a more darker character now because he's like falling the dark side.
Yeah, he was tripping in season 3.
Yeah.
Like, I was getting real frustrated there for a second because it was like, how blind can you be, Ezra? He was just being so stupid.
Yeah, and so season 1 kind of, I mean, not season 1, sorry. Season 3 kind of opens with Kanan trying to figure out who he is in the Force. I know we talk a lot about Kanan and Ezra. They're kind of the main focus of the show, but the other characters I would say in this season get really fleshed out, so I'll get them in a second. It starts out with Kanan kind of figuring out he's really sad about being blind. He feels a call in the Force. He goes and finds this character called the Bendu. The Bendu is very cool.
The Bendu was so cool.
Bendu's played by Tom Baker, legendary actor in British television. He played the 4th Doctor in Doctor Who. I love Doctor Who, so that was awesome to see. I can give a whole other rant about Doctor Who sometimes. If you want to see that episode, just let me know. But played by him, very cool voice. He basically teaches Kanan the lesson of look inward onto yourself and figure out who you are in the universe, who you are in the Force, because Kanan had so much fear and self-doubt, and he was projecting that, and it was making him hard to connect to the Force. He says, look at your fears, who you are, and Kanan was able to see who he was, and was able to make him see in the Force. So as long as he knew who he was able to use that and be able to see the world around him. So despite him being still physically blind, he was able to see and using the Force, which is really cool, which enabled him to reach Ezra again because their relationship got really strained in that after that whole season 2 finale. Save Ezra, who was kind of going on the deep, falling off, going really crazy in the dark side.
He fell off.
He did fall off. He got bald.
Dude, that was crazy. Okay, because Sabine got like 4 different hair dyes and stuff, and Kanan got 3 hairstyles throughout the whole show, and Hera got some cool different outfits, and Ezra, they did my boy kind of dirty because it was like every time he got a new outfit, it's like, guys, it's a new shade of brown. And then like he was like had this cool long hair in the beginning, and then they nerfed him and gave him a buzz cut and then kept it for 3 seasons. Two still too much.
Two still too much.
And I was like, why do you look like that? And I don't know if it was like I don't know. I didn't like it. I didn't care for his I don't know. That's such a like non-issue of like I'm over here like me. I don't like Ezra's haircut, but it's how I feel. So
yeah, this is about how we feel about the show.
You're like deep points, and I'm like the clothing.
His
Come
hair.
on. No, I swear, guys, I do care.
You do very much, and we'll get to that. So their relationship kind of fixes. They learn to keep ebb and flowing. throughout the season. And so they figure out who they are with each other. Kanan figures out, how to see with the Force. Ezra figures out, like, he has serious judges of character. So he figures that out. Meanwhile, the other characters, Hera is currently now leading basically the rebellion. I forgot to mention that in season 2, her story kind of was figuring out the foundations of the rebellion. They get introduced to the larger rebellion, and they're trying to, like, figure out. A lot of the show is really cool because it's like, we're trying to find, like, oh, here's some Y-Wings, and, like, we need to steal them from this depot yard, and, like, get them fueled up, and, like, it's a whole mission, this whole episode for them to just scrape by and get, like, 6 and the Y-Wings. It's just for the episode to kind of end it, and it goes, and that's the Y-Wings that was at the Battle of Yavin in the first Star Wars movie, so it's like, you get to see all the stuff, like, it gives backstories to a lot of stuff of how the rebellion got to where it was
like
in
Wedge
the original
and
trilogy.
Tilly's coming
Yeah,
up.
Wedge comes into the show, which is so cool. Bonus points for knowing his last.
Oh,
yeah, bonus
thank
points
you.
for knowing his last name.
Explain how much that means, because I feel like certain people who watched the original trilogy might have missed that.
I might have missed
Missed Wedge.
Miss Wedge. Wedge is one of the background pilots in the original trilogy. He's the only pilot to survive all 3 movies, and so he's kind of like in the fandom a very like. He's a very minor character, but a little bit of like a fan favorite. Like a lot of people like him, and they gave him a backstory in Rebels where they introduced him. He's played by Nathan Crest, who was the Freddy from iCarly. He gets to voice.
I did not know that. Oh my gosh!
See, he voices Wedge in that show,
Yeah.
and they gave him a little bit of a backstory.
Yeah, he was actually like a cadet in the Empire.
Yeah, where
and
he was
then,
working for the Empire.
Yeah, Sabine rescued him out of the Empire, so that's even like.
So it's really
cooler.
cool. You just see so many backstories about like how the rebellion got to the point where it was what is basically Star Wars Rebels is really important in the Star Wars timeline, which is something I'm going to get to because it's very much of like, okay, Luke Skywalker and all of those characters wouldn't have been able to do what they would have done if it wasn't for the characters in Star Wars Rebels in very subtle ways. And I'll explain more about that later. But pretty much in season 2 and 3, Hera is trying to lead the rebellion and trying to figure out, she's more like, I would say one of the founders of the rebellion along with Bail Organa and Mon Mothma. And so Hera was one of the founding leaders of the rebellion, I would say. And so she's along with like, the other greats of the rebellion and leading it and finding it. So her story is like, she's really hyper focused on that to the point where like her and Kanan like have a will they won't they kind of thing going on, which you liked a lot.
Well,
I liked a lot too.
It was really well written.
Yeah.
Speaking of the writing, I wanted to say something. Not to come back to feeling like I'm bashing the writing in Avatar at all, but I do like comparing the differences. And one of the things that I don't care for so much in the Avatar writing is I feel like a lot of characters come in and a lot of things happen that you actually don't see come back around later. And if it does, it's in a very, very small way that doesn't feel very impactful. And because it's so fast-paced and like, for example, like Haru comes up in the beginning and like they save him from the Fire Nation and like Jet and stuff like that, and like those characters do come up again like very minorly, but it felt so random as they were just traveling and it was like, all right, another kid and another random weird mission, and it doesn't really feel like we're getting to anything. And then until you get to like Sozin's Comet, it doesn't really feel like there's actually much of a plot. It feels like they're so lost. And I think what they were going for is like, okay, they're traveling, but along the way they meet people that help teach them lessons and be in situations that teach them lessons to give them the skills that they are going to need to face these big challenges. And I feel like Rebels kind of does something similar, but it also, because it's part of a greater universe, they had the opportunity to expound upon those things that happened in the past. And I really like that because it's like you have these moments where you're like, oh my gosh, it's this character. Oh my gosh, like this in the original trilogy couldn't have happened if it wasn't for this thing that happened in Star Wars Rebels. So every single thing feels so purposeful, and they did not have to do that. They could have just made it its own show about, the forming of the rebellion and kind of sprinkled in a couple Easter eggs, but they made it like so influential, like in a really big way.
Oh, for sure. And like everything everything comes together in Star Wars Rebels, even like the filler episodes, like when you get to the finale, which we'll get to after I finish wrapping up a couple other stuff I want to talk about. Well, everything comes together in Star Wars Rebels where like these minute characters that you're like, well, what's the point of this person? Or like you get to like different things of, oh, the Malurons, it has a sweet thing at the end, and it's like all these tiny little details point to like at the end of the show of like everything comes together. But pretty much season 3 wraps up with you have Thrawn, and I guess I should really talk about Thrawn. I forgot to talk about the main villain of it.
I
So
love Thrawn.
Thrawn
So much.
Thrawn is really cool. Thrawn was written by Timothy Zahn in a book called Heir to the Empire back in 1992, I believe, around that era.
I think it was 1991.
1991, something like that. It was after the original trilogy came out, but before the prequels were coming out. Star Wars was kind of like, it was in, the pop culture, but it was kind of like going down a little bit. And then Timothy Zahn wrote a book about this kind of like this Sherlock Holmes kind of like villain who was picking up the pieces of the Empire after the events of the original trilogy. And so you have this character, and he rises up into the ranks of the Empire, finds his way of like, okay, we got all the scattered Imperial forces. No one knows what to do. I'll take charge, and that's why he's called Heir of the Empire. And so he takes charge of the Empire, and then it's been a while since I've read the book, so if I'm abridging this very much, it's because I am. He comes together, forms a kind of a new empire in a way, and pretty much is with this huge threat for all of the heroes. A lot of people liked that book series. It was very popular, and it kept Star Wars alive in a time where there was no movies coming out. Eventually, the prequels come out and all that stuff. Star Wars doesn't really need that, but he was like, always like very big in like, the underground kind of like Star Wars fandom of like people who love the books, legends, timelines. When Disney came in when they merged with Lucasfilm, they bought Lucasfilm. They made all of those books not canon anymore, and so they swept it under the rug, even to the point that there was a couple people in Marvel Comics who were like making comics at the time, and they were like, oh, we want to make this add Thrawn to our comics. It would be really cool. And Disney told them like, no one cares about those legend stuff. No one cares about Thrawn. We only care about Luke Skywalker. So make comics about him. Don't worry about Thrawn. And so he wasn't added back into canon until Dave Filoni was like, all right, for season 3, I'm going to make Thrawn my boy. He's going to be in it.
Dave Filoni's like a huge Star Wars nerd.
Huge Star Wars nerd. And so he brought in Thrawn from that and brought him back into canon. And so Thrawn is he's Chiss, which is the name of his alien species. Blue guy, red eyes, very distinguished.
Bald.
Not bald.
He is bald.
He's not bald.
Yes, he is.
No, he's not.
Yes, he is.
Okay.
Yes, Thrawn is bald. What kind of hair do you think that man has?
Hair.
I'm not okay. No, Rebels Thrawn is. Oh my gosh, he has hair. Oh my gosh, that man has a weave. I actually thought that he. Oh my gosh.
Hair.
How did I think he was bald this whole time?
How did you watch the whole show?
Did I just am I colorblind? Did I hallucinate?
I mean, his hair is kind of the same color as his skin, but like
that's why does Lars Mikkelsen look Asian when he tries to play Thrawn? He looks like okay, I don't know. He looks a little bit like Asian. Do you see it?
I see it. He looks a little bit like Elon Musk.
What is Lars Mikkelsen? Oh my gosh, he looks so different when he's not playing. Oh, that looks like what's his face from? Okay, he did such a good job though. However, I did know he wasn't bald.
So Thrawn is not bald.
Continue on more important points, please.
So pretty much, Thrawn is kind of like this. Like I said before, a Sherlock Holmes genius character.
Mm-hmm.
He's an alien character, and that's kind of important in the books. I'm not sure if it's all that talked about in the actual canon, but in the books, it's very important that the Empire is kind of racist and they don't really like alien species, especially in the Empire. That's why all the Imperial officers are humans. That's why all the stormtroopers are humans. He is not. He is an alien, but he was such a genius mastermind and strategic force in military that they promoted him as high as they did. But they kind of in the books they kind of kept him off into like this other area. I think that's kind of what they were implying in Rebels, of he wasn't as big of a deal as characters like Grand Moff Tarkin and stuff like that, as they were very much more on the like, oh, we're making the Death Star and stuff, and you can go fight the rebels in the fall or whatever. But very strategic mastermind character. And so every time he gets into a battle, he's kind of like, he figures it out. You can't really trick him. He kind of knows what everything's going on and is genius. And the only times he ever loses is because other characters do stupid stuff and like mess up his plans. We had a joke going on that he kind of like, I very much like how he's written, but at times it's kind of silly when he's like, sometimes he'll lose so badly and then he'll just look at the camera and he's like, yes, this is exactly what I accounted for. And you're like, we make jokes about that, but
he's great though.
He's really good though.
I don't know, maybe he's just so smart that I actually just can't see what he's doing.
Yeah.
Maybe he really is just that guy.
Another character that is super important in season 3 is Sabine Wren. She's the Mandalorian character, and she wasn't really expounded much in season 1 or 2. So they were kind of saving her storyline a bit. In season 3, you get to find out a lot more about her character. Her family kind of abandoned her when she left the Imperial Academy, and so she was kind of like left behind by her family, and she's struggling with her place in the overall Mandalorian society. That is until she finds the Darksaber from Maul, because back in Clone Wars he had it, and so she was able to get it through this one episode. So she has the Darksaber now. She confronts her family and pretty much is told like, oh, you're going to be the leader of Mandalore because you have it. A whole lot of drama happens of, she has to prove herself. She doesn't really want to be the leader, so she has to she's basically trying to find someone to be the leader. And so that whole season is really about her storyline in that season. It was really all about her finding her way back together with her family and restoring Mandalorians to what they should be, because a lot of the Mandalorians were starting to follow the Empire and they were not following their own way, not following the Kree. And so Sabine comes in as like, I chose this because I believed in what's right. I believe in family. I believe in what Mandalorians should be. And so her storyline is kind of expounding upon that, which is going to get further expounded in ideas like in the Mandalorian show, which I'll get more into later. But her storyline is very important in that show and that season, of specifically just, connecting us to Mandalore, connecting us to the Mandalorians and figuring out where they're at and her place in that society. And eventually she gives her Darksaber to Bo-Katan, who's a big character in Mandalorian. And that's a whole nother can of worms to talk about. So if you see Mandalorian, you know what I'm talking about. But she's the one who gives Bo-Katan...
Question.
Yes.
So in The Mandalorian, does Bo-Katan have the Darksaber?
Not starting off.
Starting off?
She loses it to Moff Gideon in that show. And then Moff Gideon kind of has it, and he's kind of using it. He doesn't really want to be a leader, and it causes whole drama. She has to get it back.
So she had it, and then in Mandalorian, she loses it.
Before Mandalorian.
Before Mandalorian, and she's looking for it, and then she's like, guys, I lost it.
Yeah. Pretty much.
Okay.
So that's her storyline. Another storyline in season 3 is Zeb and Agent Kallus. Oh my gosh.
I'm sorry.
I know exactly where you might
Another storyline is Kallus.
Oh my gosh.
I'm sorry. Guys,
do you want to talk about Kallus?
I don't ship them, but I find the fact that people ship them absolutely hysterical, because when I was first watching that episode, I was like, why does this feel like one of those like proximity romance fanfics? And I made that joke, and he's like, yeah, they're one of the biggest ships in the fandom. And I was like, no, they're not. Shut up right now. And then as it went on, I was like, I understand why people could be so inclined to feel that way. I do not. I think they have a great friendship and they have a great redemption arc together. Mm-hmm. But it is quite funny to me. And I think they have a really interesting dynamic considering Callus was the one who destroyed the Lasat planet. What's the name of the Lasat planet?
Lyrasan.
Lyrasan. Yeah, he destroyed Lyrasan and
Actually, I think Lyrasan is the planet they go to.
No, yeah. Yeah, you're right. It's
Something like that?
Lasal. No, that's like Lothal.
Something.
It's something really close to Lasat.
Yeah.
But yeah. Anyways, continue.
But anyways, and they get a little bit of more exploration in season. I can't remember their solo episode was in season 2 or 3. I think it was season 3, but I'm not 100% sure. No, I think it was in season 2 actually. But pretty much they set the groundwork of Agent Callus is kind of like that reoccurring villain who keeps coming up. He gets stranded on an ice planet with Zeb. Him and Zeb kind of learn to bond over just surviving and stuff and learning off each other. They have their both disagreements about hey, I think the Empire is wrong. Well, hey, I think the Rebellion is wrong. And so they cross paths in that and they find a mutual understanding of each other. They manage to survive that. Then Callus watches Zeb get to go back home to his family, and they're all welcome him. They're so excited to see Zeb again, and then he goes back home to the Empire, and they didn't even notice he was missing. And so it plants the seeds in his heart of I don't really even agree with this Empire thing. I don't really want to be a part of it. And so he becomes the spy in season 3 who's helping the rebellion along, to the point where he is able to kind of warn him that Thrawn was coming. And so the ending of season 3 was brutal in terms of what they were building up, because remember all those ships that they were building, everything they were fighting for, they were going to try to do this big push to free Ezra's homeworld. It was this whole thing. Thrawn comes in and destroys that dream, basically almost wipes out the entire rebellion. The reason the rebellion didn't get fully wiped out is because one of Thrawn's own commanders got impatient and then decided to break rank. It was able to have Ezra be sent out and be able to escape, warn Sabine about what was happening. She was able to come with their Mandalorians. They were able to win the day, and by win the day I mean they were able to live.
They were able to survive.
The battle wasn't won by them. They just barely was able to get out of it. And it was also cool how it went down, because Thrawn comes down on the planet, he bombs everyone, and then because of, remember Bendu from earlier, Kanan was able to talk to Bendu and be like, hey, you need to choose a side in this war. I in the past struggled with, I didn't feel like I should choose sides in a way, but now I know I have to fight for something that's right, and you need to fight for something too. Bendu, being a character who's defined by I am in the middle, I don't pick sides, gets really angry about this, and he's like, no, I'm not going to pick sides. You guys brought this war to my planet. And so he basically goes, fine, if you want me to fight, I will, but I'm not picking sides still. I'm going to be destroying both of you guys. He turns into this whole storm thing. Kind of rains down, kind of opens up for the rebellion to be able to escape, because he starts lightning clouding everything. Eventually Thrawn shoots him down, and then it's very cool because Bendu, is dying on the ground, and he gives Thrawn a prophecy where he sees his downfall, like many arms surrounding him in a cold embrace, which is what happens season 4. It's very cool. Did I tell you that?
I didn't actually think about that. Is it the Purgle?
Yeah.
Yeah, all the arms from the Purgle?
Mm-hmm.
That's so
Sealer
cool.
predicts his defeats in season 3.
That's really cool.
So season 4 kind of opens up with the finale of Sabine's arc, where she finds Bo-Katan, gives her the Darksaber, kind of leaves that off for the Mandalorians to kind of figure out their own place. A lot of season 4 is mostly about Ezra and wanting to reclaim his home planet, because Lothal is very important to him. It's very important to everyone. They keep coming back to Lothal, so there's a lot of mysticism connected to it. You find a lot of very cool Force ideas and concepts during that season of the Loth Wolves being very connected to the Force and being able to guide them through what their missions are. But a lot of that season is about them slowly overtaking Lothal back from the Empire and kind of trying to get a victory for not really the rebellion, but for Ezra. And it's very much more downscaled, of less of the greater rebellion at large, but more of this is, we're fighting for someone's home. And each character in Star Wars, destiny is a huge thing that's important to them, and each kind of character has one that they're trying to figure out. Ezra's wanted his destiny so bad to be, he wants to overthrow the Sith and stop the Empire. And in this season, he kind of figures out that's not his destiny, that's someone else's. That's you find out that's Luke Skywalker's destiny, that's Darth Vader's destiny, that's not his. What's his place in the universe? And he's figuring it out. But he first needs to learn that lesson by his master Kanan, as Kanan realizes his destiny, which leads into episode 10, which was...
Episode 10, guys, was horrible, and I hated it, and I wish that it never happened. No, not really. It was actually great and really well written, but these characters, Kanan and Hera, you're waiting for them to get together throughout the whole show, and you're like waiting for this special moment where they kiss, or literally, I mean, they kissed once before that, and it was like, finally, oh my gosh. And they keep having an on and off thing, but it's like, is that all you're gonna give me? I know that's not all you're gonna give me. Like, are they gonna tell each other they love each other? Like, what's gonna happen? And then it all happens in one episode, episode 10. 5 seconds later, it all goes to crap, and the worst possible thing that could happen happens, because it's like, he goes and he rescues his queen, and he gets her back because she's being like tortured, and she's super hopped up on, like, what is it, the droid, like,
Yeah, the protocol droid.
the protocol droid.
Not protocol droid. Probe droid.
Probe droid kind of screws with her brain a little bit, and she's kind of all silly, and it's like this really special moment because Hera's very serious, and so when she's kind of shown being very silly and lovey-dovey and kind of clingy to Kanan, it's like very like, oh my gosh, like it's so heart-wrenching and really cute. And so it's so exciting, and you're having this moment where you're like, yes, we're finally getting the fan service, and we're finally getting Kanan and Hera, and it's so exciting. And he gets her Calicori back, which is like her entire family history is inside this heirloom that she had stolen from her from Thrawn, and it's like super important to her. And he steals it back for her as he's going to rescue her, like in the middle of all that's going on. He cares about her that much that he's like, I'm gonna go find this while I have the chance and give this back to you when I see you. Unfortunately, he's doing some of these things because he knows what's going to happen next, and so he, you know, they're by a window, and like he gives it to her, and it's really cute, and she's kind of silly, and it's very romantic. And then they're like on this rooftop, and she comes up and she's like, Kanan, I know what to say now. I love you. And then he's like, it's just the probe droid talking. And then she's like, no, it's me. It's all me. And then they kiss, and you're like, yes! I've been waiting for this for so long. Kid you not, 5 seconds later, this fire blast comes, and Kanan stops it with one hand, and the other hand, he forces his whole family, who's in a ship flying at them, by the way, to come get them, forces them back like into the ship to keep them safe. So he's keeping the fire away from them and pushing them back into the ship with one hand. And in the last 5 seconds, as he's staring at the love of his life, Hera, his vision comes back, and he can see her one last time before he dies a horrible, tragic death in that fire as they're flying away. And it was the most whiplash experience of my entire life. And why did you make me watch this show? I cried so hard. I cried like a baby, because what do you mean? What do you mean they don't get to have like a happy, long future together, and you don't get to see that, and it's so sad, and it's like...
I think, yeah, and I think that's the real tragedy that lies into that, the Rebels finale and stuff, is each character gets to find out their own destiny and own place in the universe, but that doesn't mean it's a happy one.
Yeah.
And Kanan was a character who was running away from his destiny, running away from the Force after his master died. His last words from his master was run. And so that's what he did all of his life. And when he met Ezra, he found, I can't run anymore. I have to be part of this universe. I have to, as he told Bendu, I have to choose a side. I have to fight for what's right. And that's basically the defining trait of his character, is I have to fight for what's right no matter what. And he reaches the end. Hera gets captured. He reaches the point where he's like, I'm going in, I'm going to go save her. And the Loth will stop him. And he basically figures out, he sees a vision of what's going to happen. And he knows how to save the day and fulfill his destiny, but at the cost of his own life. And that's the bittersweet tragedy to it is Kanan could have ran. He could have followed what he always did and denied his destiny, but if he did, it would have cost everyone everything. And he realized, I have to fight for something bigger than myself.
Mm-hmm.
I have to fight for something that is going to help so much more people, but at the cost of I don't get the happy ending. And so he goes through, he gets his own sweet moments with Hera, final goodbye with everyone, um, because he knows what's happening. Cuts his hair, kind of cool.
Kind of hot.
Gets to save her, and then gets to the last moment where he knows his time is up, and he's going, you know what? I'm done running. I'm okay with it, and I'm going to save my family. And not only is he going to save his family, he's going to save the entire rebellion. And so in that moment, my theory is he was so connected with the Force, and its purpose, that when he was holding back the fire and holding his family, the Force was so powerful in him that it restored his vision and defied the physical limitations of what he was doing, because he was no longer part of the physical world as we should see in the traditional sense, but more connected to the Force than anyone ever was in, and it granted him what he wanted, to see his family one last time. And so he got that closure as he gave himself up and let himself pass on into the afterlife. And that, what he did, was not only something that you go, oh man, it's just small, the side
Mm-hmm.
Jedi, the side character, what's the big deal? This whole thing is the whole reason so much of what later happens, is because if he didn't do that, Hera wouldn't have been saved. They wouldn't have been able to defeat Thrawn. They wouldn't have been able to destroy what Thrawn's TIE Fighter project was working on. Hera wouldn't have gone on to later keep inspiring change in the rebellion and keep fighting for it. Basically, a lot of the stuff that happened in the original trilogy and with Luke Skywalker, and I don't think it's a stretch to say a lot of that stuff wouldn't have happened, or it wouldn't have been an easier path if Kanan Jarrus didn't go, you know what, and there's something bigger in this universe
Mm.
worth fighting for. I can't be a part of it, but hopefully the next generation, the next people can, and
Mm.
continue to pick up where I left off. But in doing so, I have to sacrifice myself. And that's really powerful and
Yeah.
really inspiring, of looking at something that's greater than yourself and going, that's what's worth fighting for. And that's why Kanan is my favorite Star Wars
Mm.
character. One of my
A
favorite
thesis by me.
one of my favorite characters in all of fiction is Kanan. He's
Yeah.
just that, to have that level of self-sacrifice is
Well, it's incredible because he could have said to himself and he could have decided and been like, you know, I could do that and it would help, but like, I really want to, there must be another way, or there must be a way where we lose a little bit, but I still get my family. And like, he could have played that game in his head where he chose a different path because he wanted a future with Hera, because he did, but he knew because he was connected to the Force. I think it was literally, like you said, it was because of his connection to the Force. I don't think it was something through only him. I think it was the
mm,
influence of like the Loth Wolves had like a big role in that, because it's like they were telling him and they were showing him in a really big way. It wasn't just this feeling that he got where it was like, oh, I think I have to do this, but I don't really want to. It was like, no, like the actual force that guides the universe is telling you this is what you have to do. And in that moment, all of the rebels, like the rebel leaders, the main people who started the rebellion, would have died in that moment. And could you imagine how devastating of a loss that would have been for the rest of the rebellion, who kind of relied on these people for hope, because it was kind of because of that win on Lothal, of them taking it back and the Empire not really trying to mess with them again, that it gave people hope of like they said, it was like the invincible empire. It was like kind of a stigma that was around the empire where it was like, they're so powerful and invincible, we're not even gonna try. And then someone stepped up and was like, that can't be true, we're gonna try. And because of that, I think that inspired the hope and the change and the kind of push that everyone needed to make it possible for Luke Skywalker to blow up the Death Star and do what he did. And it's like, it makes you wonder, like, would they have had the hope and courage that they had, and would things have gone the way that they did if Kanan hadn't died, you know?
Exactly. And that's a lot of what the story is about. Is like it's about the small little family. What can they do with this in the universe that matters so much, and showing what they did matter. It
Mm.
changed everything. The Star Wars universe is very connected to Rebels. I think is what shows why it's such a shame that a lot of people write it off or don't really focus on it,
Mm-hmm.
or like oh I don't really want to watch those kids shows because it's like yeah, you could watch the original trilogy and stuff, and it doesn't really change much if you're viewing enjoyment. But there's something special going, you know what? These characters wouldn't be here in this context doing what they're doing if it wasn't for this small family who just loved each other and
Mm.
wanted to do the best that they could in the universe, and it inspired so much change. And one of the biggest things they did, and it's very important for my overall thesis of Rebels, I would say, is what Kanan's sacrifice meant for Ezra,
Mm.
because Ezra was a character who's very started off very self-centered, very much like I only care about myself, getting my own way through the in the universe. He was very self-reliant. His parents were captured by the Empire. He obviously wanted to find them, but he gave that up when he met the Rebels crew and realized, you know what? There's bigger things in the universe than I am. There's bigger things than fighting for me, for just myself and just to survive. And I think Kanan's death was one of that final lesson for him, where he realized I have a destiny too. It's not to be Luke Skywalker. It's not to be this guy who fights the Empire and stands up and saves Darth Vader. That's not my journey in life. But I have a very small but very big role to play in the universe. And so Ezra sees that and he goes, someone has to fight for against Thrawn, and someone has to stand up against this and fight for the rebellion here and now. And prior Ezra would have just gone, nope, you know what? I care too much about myself. I care
Mm.
only about my way in life. But because of the lessons Kanan and the rest of the Ghost crew
Yeah.
taught him, he was going, you know what? No, I have to do this. I have to follow my destiny.
Mm.
And so, in a very self sacrificial moment, just like his master before him, Ezra goes, um, against everything of what his family wanted, everything that was going on, and goes, I'm going to confront Thrawn myself. And he goes and fights Thrawn face to face, and uses the Purgle, which are the space whales that were kind of cool in
The
season 2.
hyperspace whales.
Hyperspace whales, gets past Thrawn's fleet, being able to capture him, and they blast him off. But in doing so, he has to go, can't be part of the rebellion anymore. I can't be part of this family anymore. I have to make sure that Thrawn is gone
He
for
basically
good.
exiles himself to capture Thrawn, kind of, because what happens is there's these hyperspace whales called the Purgil, and they're exactly what they sound like. They're whales that can go into hyperspace, so they can travel really, really fast. And he kind of goes off on his own while they're kind of fighting, and they're like, we have no idea what we're going to do. And he comes back without really telling anybody, kind of as a surprise, with all of the Purgil, and they all kind of just start flying, and their tentacles start, like, you know, entangling around the ships and destroying things and blowing things up. And one of them kind of like wraps around the ship that him and Thrawn are in, and then wraps itself around Thrawn and kind of like is constricting him. And Ezra's inside that ship, and the whale starts glowing, which means it's about to go into hyperspace and travel very, very far away. And the rest of the crew is like telling him to stop, and they're like, Ezra, like, get out of the ship, get out, like, we can't lose you, like, you gotta come out before that whale goes into hyperspace. But he knew, he was like, if I leave now, I don't know where that's gonna go, and it could conveniently go somewhere that Thrawn could very easily get out of, or maybe he won't die, or maybe, we'll be right back where we started. I have to see this through, and I have to make sure that I finish this and I don't chicken out right at the moment where if I don't see this through, it could be crucial. And so he stays, and he travels into hyperspace and leaves, and they don't really see him again. And he left them a message behind saying, like, if you see this, that means I did something stupid. And he says goodbye to everybody in a very bittersweet way and says, different things that he needs to say to people in this recording. But the show ends with them not knowing where he is and wanting to come back and get him and find him. And he knows that they won't give up on him and that they will go look for him even if he's long gone. They are not gonna give up on finding him, and that's what the Ahsoka show is about, is finding Ezra Bridger. So
Yeah, and the whole Star Wars Rebels thing feels like that one meme of like the small dominoes building up to these big ones. And what's interesting about, and my theory about a lot of the big stuff about why Ezra's sacrifice is so important, it goes, okay, he wiped out Thrawn, who cares? The reason it cares, I think it matters so much, is because there was a line that I read in Heir to the Empire that I thought was really interesting. That there's, I think his name's Captain Pelion, is kind of like the Watson to Thrawn's Sherlock Holmes, which I just found out he was in Mandalorian season 3, and I don't remember that, but that's cool. But he says a line about Thrawn where he goes, "If Thrawn was at the Battle of Endor, I don't think we would have lost." And I was like, always that stuck with me about like, okay, Thrawn was this brilliant tactician, the best of the best. I think if he was around during the original trilogy, I don't think characters like Luke Skywalker would have been able to sneak on board the Death Star, save Princess Leia, or blow up the Death Star. I don't think during the Battle of Endor, they would have been able to defeat the Empire the way they did. I think if someone like Thrawn was there, he would have been able to win those battles easy. And they wouldn't have put up much of a fight. And, maybe not. Maybe they could have found another way and stuff. But I feel like if Thrawn was there, it wouldn't have happened the way it was. And so Ezra's sacrifice of making sure Thrawn wasn't there for the original trilogy, I think is one of the biggest things that could have happened in the Star Wars universe, of making sure this guy was not there. So there's just small things throughout the entire universe that just leads up to all the characters being able to be put in the position to where the original trilogy happens the way it happens, but only because somehow this small family affected everything in the universe. And I think even in its own show, they really showed that, of what I loved about the season finale of Rebels, which I can't think of another instance where that's really happened. I know so many stuff keeps trying to do that. I call it the Avengers Endgame effect, where you bring in all the characters from before, and it's like this cool moment and stuff. A lot of people are trying to do that, and it just doesn't hold a lot of weight. But I feel like Rebels did it in a very subtle way, of when you get to the season finale, everyone that they met from all the other missions, all the other stuff that they did through season 1 all the way up to season 4, they come back all because they were like, this group of people changed my life and it mattered, and now I'm going to repay the favor and I'm going to fight for something greater myself. So it's like you have characters like Hondo, who was like, I'm just this pirate scavenger, scum, I don't really care, I'm just in it for myself because you know what, Ezra mattered to me, so I'm going to fight for the rebellion and fight for something greater. You have other characters like Vizago, who's kind of the same story as Hondo. Captain Rex was a character very big in Clone Wars. He was just going to be living out retirement until you met the rebellion, that Rebels crew, and he became part of that mission. He was there too. All these characters came together in this really beautiful way, where everyone there during that final battle, even the background characters who were just like miners and farmers, just in the background, was there because they were saved at one point by the Rebels crew. So it just felt like everything that they did mattered, and it held weight to it. And that's just what I really like about Rebels. It's really important, and really important in the Star Wars timeline. And we're getting close to the end, but I very much wanted to say my little small theory about the overall Star Wars timeline is, I think Star Wars Rebels is the reason you have the two timelines of canon and legends. And what do I mean by that is, remember when I was talking about how Disney made all those old books about Timothy Zahn, all legends books, none of that stuff, is there anymore in the canon, and now the canon has the sequel trilogy and all the Disney Plus shows and what they're doing now. And a lot of people are like, oh, you very much want Legends back, and some people are like, no, I like the canon stuff now. That's a big thing in the fandom. You have those two different timelines. I think Rebels is the big thing that kind of separates the two timelines, and what do I mean by that is, in the Legends timeline, Grand Admiral Thrawn wasn't part of the Battle of Endor or anything like that because it was very, very much the Empire was racist and kept him off to the sides and made sure he wasn't there, and so his character came into after um, the end of the original trilogy, and he was a big threat in all those sequel books after that. And so that's kind of what that sparked a lot of the Legends timeline, and so a lot of the stories afterwards is all about that and stuff like that. And so that none of those events got to happen because in Rebels something was different in the timeline where Ezra Bridger was able to look at what was going on and take Thrawn out of that, and I think that was the inciting moment that changed the timelines. So you have the canon timeline and the Legends timeline because something about Ezra changed the timeline of now we have the canon timeline that leads to the sequel trilogy and all the stuff that wouldn't have happened if Thrawn was there. And I don't know the greater implications of that. I don't even know if that's where they're going or anything about that. But I feel like that split those two timelines, and now you have the Legends one and the canon one, and it's all because Ezra Bridger removed Thrawn from the timeline. And I think that's just a small thing about the Star Wars universe. But I think that's really neat and kind of cool. And so I really wanted to just I don't see anyone ever talk about how cool that is that Thrawn wasn't there to do the Heir of the Empire books because Ezra took him out of the timeline, took him out away from all of this.
I didn't think about that. That's really cool.
And I know, I feel like that's really cool, and no one talks about that, and I feel like they're gonna explore something about that in Rebels. They introduced the World Between Worlds, which is this whole area in the space and time connected to the Force that connects all the timelines together. And I feel like something about Ezra visiting that might have inspired the timeline to change, and something happened.
We completely forgot to mention the part where Ahsoka got basically brought back.
Oh yeah, Ahsoka did live.
That's where we really got to wrap up. But yeah, Ahsoka lives. Yeah, she lives.
That's good.
That's how the Ahsoka show exists, because he basically goes into the World Between Worlds, which is kind of like this place where all time and space kind of just meets up into this sanctuary where basically all of the memories of the world is kind of stored, and there's a door where the timeline where Ahsoka is killed by Darth Vader is kind of shown in this door, and it's kind of replayed, and Ezra literally reaches in and grabs Ahsoka as he's about to kill her, and that somehow actually took her out of that past thing and literally changed the timeline. And so she lives. So yeah.
Yeah, I think that's really neat because in the Ahsoka show you get to see that more a little bit. It has a cool scene with Hayden Christensen and all that. Very cool and stuff. And so I feel like we still have very much more to flesh out with what are the implications of the World Between Worlds.
Yeah.
What's the implications of the Mortis gods? I don't want them to explain everything because I feel like it's kind of cool to have a little bit of mythology and a little bit of theory to be able to put into Star Wars. But there's so much about that's really cool, and there's so much you could do with that, and they could explain what they're doing now in the Star Wars timeline, what they're doing now in all of this. It's very cool, and I feel like no one talks about Ezra Bridger literally changed the entire timeline. Whether you like him or not, I don't care. I think it's cool, and I think you're cool, and that's how I'm ending this video.
What a great outro. Thank you guys so much for listening to or watching issue 26. Please leave us a comment. Let me know what you thought. And
I can't wait for all the Avatar defenders to hate us in the comments for it. By the way, we love Avatar.
We're going to talk about it next. That's what our next episode's going to be on. So, and we're going to be really mean. So make sure you're there. I have so much mean stuff to say about Katara.
And the best way of we love this.
No,
so
not in the best way.
No, not about Katara. I meant we
in the best way, except for when it comes to Katara, I mean that in the worst way.
I meant we love the show to the point that's why we have so much to say about it in a way of it sounds so mean because it's
I'm not opinionated on things unless I actually care.
Exactly.
Sometimes I care in the wrong way though.
I only say that because I know someone is going to go, you just hate Avatar, and it's no, I love Avatar, that's why I hate it.
I don't think that makes any sense, but that's a good place to wrap up.
But that's a good place to wrap up. So thank you so much for coming to this podcast. If you're watching this, please subscribe on YouTube. So what is it on Spotify? Is it subscribe, follow, do something? If you can follow...
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead. I was letting you go.
Thank you so much for listening to this podcast. If you're watching on YouTube, please subscribe and give us a like. And if you're listening on Spotify, please rate the show. It would help greatly. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
All right, we'll see you in the next one. Bye.